thing that bugged me was out of 2,000 people in the church, whenever we did something, like actually did something, like work at the food pantry, rehab housing, do things that help people, there's like 15 people there. It's the same 15 people. That's not even 1%. People gave a lot of money to that church. They did a lot of storytelling with it. They did a lot of building stuff. They resurfaced the parking lot a million times, and they didn't do any good, as far as I could tell. And after a certain point, I didn't believe the stories anyway, so I stopped going. And I was happily unreligious for about a decade. In all honesty, I'm still trying on this Unitarian Universalist thing. I mean, is this, I know I'm not supposed to say this up here at the editor, is this really the best thing you can do with your money? There's so many other needs. People are hungry, people are in danger. I did the homeless count for the city one year. I went out, I had to wear 4 pairs of socks, it was so cold. My feet still went numb when wandering around Uptown. And I'm complaining about this. I have to be out there for like 2 hours. I found a family of 7 living on the street in that kind of weather. And one of them runs away. They didn't want to talk to us because they were so afraid of being deported that they were more afraid of that than a Chicago winter. So, I mean, there's so much wrong here. If you want to find a cause to give money to, you have to look around that much. I can find you one. For real. So why a church, especially a church where they don't tell all those unbelievable stories? They sing all the hymns, but they use the wrong words. I don't know. I mean, I think one answer is that we need a home. There are more people here in this congregation right now that actively make the world better than there were in my whole old congregation of 2,000 people. But we need things too. We need a place where we can embody those values and make them real. We need a place that feeds us and lets us know what we're capable of. A place that asks us to seek the truth and to see the world and each other in new ways. And maybe a place that helps us look at those old stories in a new way. Think about Jesus in the Roman Woodstock thing in a minute. Do you really believe there were 5,000 people there so dumb they'd hike out in the middle of nowhere and not bring any food? Really? I don't. Let me tell you what happened. Lots of people brought lunch. But when they saw how many people were there, they hid it. They sat on it and pumped it in their gloves. I got nothing, man. Okay? Because they didn't want to have to share. If other people were too dumb to bring food, and they started bringing it out and had to share, then, there wouldn't be enough to go around. And they're saying, what about me? I'm going to eat this later. So they sat, and they didn't dare to bring anything out. So when somebody started passing food around, somebody else started giving it away. It gave them permission. And they're like, oh, I got some here, And it spread around. They started passing. There was more and more as you pass it around rather than less and less. And it worked out. There's enough food. There was always enough food. There's enough food right now that no one needs to go hungry. There is enough shelter right now that nobody needs to be homeless. There's enough love right now that nobody needs to be lonely. There is enough hope that nobody needs to despair, and there is enough money that we can keep this church going as a beacon of liberal values on Chicago's west side, if that's what we want to do. So cough it up.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We give not so that we can keep the lights on, but rather because having the lights on means that we can be together. We give not so that we can have the heat on, but rather because we recognize that not all of us have heat. We give not to pay the minister or the staff, but because having a minister and a staff to challenge and encourage us transforms our lives. We give not because we are obligated to, but because through our giving this community offers us meaning and support. We give, in short, not because it makes the church possible. We give because the church helps to make all of us together possible. This morning's offering will be gratefully received. May it be joyfully given. Will the ushers please come forward?
Love is a burning thing, and it makes a fiery ring. Bound by wild desire, I found you a ring of fire. Thou lit to a burning fire. I went down, down, down as the flames went higher, and it burns, burns, burns. The ring of fire, the ring of fire.
The following quote is from the poet Annie Dillard. I read about an Eskimo hunter who asked the local missionary priest, "If I did not know about God and sin, would I still go to hell?" "No," said the priest, "not if you did not know." "Then why," said the Eskimo earnestly, "did you tell me?" This quote reminds me of a conversation I had with my father. My father was a good man. He came from a long line of Methodists, went to church every Sunday, but he didn't question things. In our conversation, I said to him, "One thing has always bothered me. It just doesn't seem fair to me that the heathens who've never heard of Christ should go to hell." There was a long pause, and my father finally said, "You know what? I'd never thought of that." Well, as you can see, I am no longer a Methodist. I am a Unitarian. I do question things. One of the things that I liked about being a Unitarian is that I didn't have to believe anything. That's great, right? But then along came Jennifer. Remember her sermon on faith a few weeks ago? She pointed out that all of us have a core set of beliefs that affect how we live our lives. This came as a jolt to me. I thought, what is it that I really believe? Then I thought back to a class I took here at TUC 10 or 15 years ago. In the class, we talked about what it means to be a Unitarian. We were asked to make a list of things we believe, our core beliefs, so to speak. I thought, I remember making that list, but I don't remember what I said. And you had written the list on a notepad, but I had no idea where it was. Then, at home, I went to a cupboard where I kept a stack of old notebooks. I can't throw anything away. I reached in, and guess what? The first one I put my hand on was this notepad. At the top was written 10 Commandments. I'm not kidding. As Unitarians, most of us don't like commandments or rules, but there it was. I had written 10 rules. Here's what I said. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Look for the good in all people and all situations. Forgive. Appreciate and love beauty in all its forms. Seek the truth, but always allow others to have a different opinion as to what is true. Judge not. Seek perfection, but always allow for the imperfection of others and yourself. Appreciate nature, love, share. Now don't get me wrong. I don't pretend that I come close to following these rules. I'm not ready to call myself a Unitarian saint. But I'm very thankful I have this church to come to every Sunday. Here we can, together, try to make the world a little better place. Who are my people? You are my people. Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing hymn number 18.
You may be seated. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice." He was preaching to a civil rights movement facing enormous suffering and very bad odds. We're looking back at history now, so we know they won most of the things that they were fighting for, most importantly, the Voting Rights Act. The civil rights movement also changed American culture. While racism is still alive and well, it's not alive in the same way. When America watched black folks being attacked with clubs and dogs and water cannons on national television, they became ashamed of racism and said, "We don't want to do things like that anymore." Access to the vote changed the balance of power in this representational democracy, and the nation began a new approach to race. But none of that was a foregone conclusion. At the time, as Fannie Lou Hamer here on the chancel told us last week, people were being threatened and killed for trying to make these changes. At the time, it was a struggle. It wasn't obvious that this would happen. Famous and powerful people publicly supported segregation and Jim Crow. The movement was challenging the norm of the time and trying to expose that norm for what it was, something truly horrible. But it was very difficult. It always is very difficult to challenge the status quo, much more difficult than looking back and saying, "Oh yeah, that was unjust. People were really doing terrible things back then." Today, the Black Lives Matter movement is struggling to challenge the new norm of contemporary racism, particularly as it manifests in police violence against Black people, an unequal justice system, and a seemingly indifferent American public. Michelle Alexander argues in her recent book, The New Jim Crow, that today's system of mass incarceration is the contemporary manifestation of the racial caste system in the United States. She argues that the drug war's purpose, its purpose, is to police and control communities of color and incarcerate masses of their members. Despite the fact that all races use illegal drugs in the same proportion, the drug war disproportionately targets and incarcerates people of color for nonviolent drug offenses. The violent policing of communities of color and the fact that as many Black people are killed by police today as were lynched in the South during Jim Crow is part of this picture. And while reporting is neither uniform nor required by law, according to the FBI, 2013 had the highest number of police killings ever. The current mass incarceration system, though, is not only legal, it is the law itself, the supposed definition of justice in today's society. So how does the current movement, the current Black Lives Matter movement, find hope for change? How do they look at today's status quo and say, we can change that? 50 years ago, when the civil rights movement faced seemingly insurmountable opposition, Dr. King preached that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Almost 100 years before that, Unitarian minister Theodore Parker wrote, "Look at the facts of the world. You see a continual and progressive triumph of the right. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but a little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight, but I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure that it bends towards justice." Theodore Parker was an abolitionist, living during the time of slavery. This quote from him was published in an 1857 book of his sermons. Abraham Lincoln, as you know, did not issue the Emancipation Proclamation until 1863, 6 years later and 3 years into the Civil War. King, like Parker before him, when he said the arc of the moral universe is long, was making a faith claim. There was no reason to believe that Jim Crow would end. There was no reason 100 years prior to that to believe that slavery would end. The forces of money and power, backed up by brutality and violence, were lined up against freedom and love. And yet, they proclaimed it. They stood in the pulpit, they stood on the streets, they stood in front of the masses and said, we are moving towards justice, towards beloved community, towards the world that we dream about. There is a new arena in psychology today called positive psychology. Its proponents point to study after study that find that optimistic people are happier, healthier, and more successful. Its critics claim that false optimism makes people stupid and blinds them to the reality that they're living in. The truth might lie somewhere in between those ends. Hope does indeed make our lives better. It enables us to endure suffering. It makes us think that that suffering might be worth it at some point. But also, hoping in a way that removes us from reality can lead to apathy and even nihilism. Like faith, hope might be judged by its fruits rather than just as its label. We might ask ourselves, is this a hope that bears the fruit of creativity and new possibility, or is this a hope that breeds retreat from the world. Regardless of the fruits, we can be sure that if we cannot imagine the new world we want to bring into being, if we do not believe that that new world is possible, then we will never create it. Hope opens the door to the world becoming. There is a piece of proclaiming that we are moving towards justice that is simply a belief about the way that the world works. Unitarianism has a history of looking back and forth at human history and seeing progress. We believe that we can learn. We believe that we can look at the world, that we can decide what would make it better, and that as humans we can make those choices. We believe in an increased complexity and justice that we see happening over the course of human history. There is also a piece of this claim that is about inspiration. If we can't hope for it or imagine it, then we can't create it. Our ability to claim something is possible becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Our very claim that it is happening initiates the movement towards it. And finally, there is a piece that is about loving community. We are capable of imagining this future beloved community of justice because we see a loving community among us here today. It is the community around us that seeds our belief in that future possibility. Because we can see the seeds of love today, because we can feel them between us, then we can experience the possibility of the future right now in our own bodies through how we love one another and how that love makes us hope for a better life. All the major changes for justice sprang out of movements. Movements are made up of communities of people who loved each other so much that they believed that love could change the world, that they believed love itself could organize society, that love was stronger than fear, stronger than hate, stronger than power, stronger than the status quo. They believed that because they were experiencing love in their lives, in their communities, that that love could spread and be the rule of the day. This community, Third Unitarian Church, was involved in the Civil Rights Movement. Roberta Wilson told a story just last week about how she joined this church because when the black and white youth in this neighborhood wanted a place to meet and talk about the struggle, this was the only church that opened the doors to them. You have been on the cutting edge of so many social justice issues over the years. And today, on Commitment Sunday, you're making a decision not just about how you want to remember the past and be remembered, but also about how you want to project into the future. TUC has something unique to offer, both to you, its members, that refuge that Craig was talking about, but also to the world. It's your decision how powerful you want this community to be. It's your decision how much you want it to hold you and hold your families, but also how much you want to be out in the neighborhood, how powerful you want TUC to be in the world. Do you want TUC to survive? But more than survive, to thrive. What caliber of minister do you want to be able to attract for the next phase of TUC's life? You're making that decision today. How do you want to see yourselves living into the future? If you believe in this place, if this place matters to you and you think it matters in the world, then it's your responsibility as a community to build that bridge into the future. Growth takes energy, it takes commitment, and it takes resources. You're the ones who make that happen. So I think that TUC does matter. I think it is needed not just as a home for people of diverse beliefs, a place to come and bring your children, a welcoming religious home for people who want ethics and community, though it's important that that space lives on, but also because it is a radical beacon of hope for a better future. TUC is Chicago's radical church on the West Side. It's a seedbed for new ideas and new ways of being in multicultural community, working for justice. I told you before, when I started preaching about Black Lives Matter in this church, the response that I got was appreciation, enthusiasm, commitment, and joy. And that is not the response other ministers around this city got when they were preaching about it. This is a special place. TUC means something, not just to the people who are inside of its walls, but it means something in Chicago, it means something in Unitarian Universalism, and it means something to the world. You're growing something new here, too. A new vision for the world, a new vision of multiculturalism, a commitment to radical love. And that's why, even though I'm only going to be with you for a couple of years as a transitional minister, I today will be pledging at the visionary level. You can look on your sheet for some suggestions about opportunities to pledge, because TUC is my congregational home. And I believe that it's growing an important and necessary vision for the future of the 21st century, both in Chicago and in Unitarian Universalism. Today, you're going to decide what kind of resources TUC will have to grow that future. I hope you will join me in making sure that this place has the kind of sustenance it needs not only to survive, but to thrive in the 21st century. May it be so, and blessed be. So today we're going to ritually celebrate our commitment to this church in a Commitment Sunday ceremony. If you do not have your pledge card, or if you have for some reason not yet filled it out, now is the time to do so. There are copies of pledges in your order of service. If you're visiting here with us for the first time, good morning, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. You're welcome to participate in this ritual or not, as you so choose. In a moment, Kyle is going to begin praying for us, and you're going to have a couple of moments to reflect and fill out your card if you haven't already done so. Alan Matthews, our board chair, is standing up here on the chancel with a basket. When you're ready to make your commitment to the community, please come up the center aisle with your pledge card and drop it in the basket. The members of the board are going to come up first, and when they get up here, they're going to hand you a flower of appreciation for your commitment to this community. So I'd like you to take a moment now and think about what TUC means to you. What does it mean to your family? What does it mean to have a place like TUC in the world? spirit and join us in singing our closing hymn, which is number 108 in your gray hymnal, My Life Flows On, an Endless Song. We are a part of this living community today, together planting seeds of hope, hailing a new creation, visioning a vibrant community flowering with justice. How can I keep from singing? And though we extinguish the light of the chalice here, we carry its light and warmth with us in our hearts. Amen and blessed be.